And that brings us to the fun part of the show. Let's put together a game plan. Let's put what is going to be good for the Bills and why there's some encouraging reasons why the Bills ultimately, if you were to pick up a game, like this was a very interesting point. Would you pick the Patriots, the Jets, or the Dolphins with a win and get the number 2 seed scenario? There's probably people out there knowing the state of this that may feel better picking the Dolphins. Now, that's silly. But ultimately what that Jets and Patriots defense is able to do, you probably still pick the Patriots, but realistically, there is a play that would make you want to pick and play against this Miami Dolphins team just because of some of these statistics that I'm about to go over for you of why, like, ultimately the domination hasn't been over the Jets and the Patriots. It's been fairly 500 against both of those teams. But when it comes to the Dolphins, it's been pure domination. So let's talk about this season. The Bills have a 457 strength of schedule, 444 strength of victory, 3-2 against teams over 500, and 4-2 against playoff teams. Pretty good numbers for a playoff team, for a top 5 team. Now, conversely, now the Dolphins have a 432 strength of schedule, lowest in the AFC and in the NFL playoffs, a 358 strength of victory, lowest in the AFC and the NFL playoffs, a 1-4 against teams over 500, a 1-4 against playoff teams, both lows in the NFL playoffs. So you sense a little bit of a thing there that they were able to barely beat the Cowboys at home. As the one time that they are able to do something good. But other than that, they have mightily struggled against some of the league's best. You hear like it's going to be over 50% Bills fans there. Tua against the Bills, 1-5, 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 79 rating. Josh Allen, 9-2, 31 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 110 rating, 10-2, including the playoffs, 350 yards extra and 3 touchdowns. So you see where we're going with this, where, the domination that the Bills have had, and they have dropped a game recently last year in Miami. They're generally 4-2 there, though. It's not really a place they don't go and can't win there or something along those lines. It's definitely a place where they're able to win. And then lastly, the total overall statistics of what I like to say is Josh Allen, 5-1 on Sunday Night Football. That is a pretty cool statistic. His only loss coming against Joe Burrow this year in that game that basically got Dorsey fired. 14-6 all around in night games. Pretty good. You want to take that. Tua is 500 on Sunday Night Football, 2-2, 5-5 in night games. Just really all around with it when it comes to good. And these are good, usually good opponents for the most part. Just 500. I mean, that is what the Dolphins are on the road. That is what the Dolphins play when they play on the road, or a good team, or a team in the playoffs, or a team on the night games. Kevin, they're 500 in these situations across the league. A lot of the times, some of the wins coming against maybe the Chargers, along those lines of games that are very winnable. The Patriots was one of the night games in there. But when they played the Chargers last year, that pretty good Chargers team, they weren't able to get it done. The Eagles, etc. They definitely have struggled at times in those games. So some of these fringe matchup statistics are very, very interesting to me, because it just all skewed to where a team struggles mightily against a team that plays really well in a lot of these situations. So that's what really jumps out to me, and just the dominance of Josh Allen since the first game he played against Miami, where he lost and played fairly well. I mean, to go 10-1 beside that in 11 straight games, that's more than just lucky. There's something to that style. It's like Tom Brady level against the Bills, where you're just pretty good, in those personal situations. 9-1 record, 1-0 in the playoff, 5 AFC Player of the Week awards against Miami, second most touchdowns all time on Miami, most consecutive games with 2+ touchdowns against one team with 12. 456 rushing yards for 5 touchdowns. That's running back 1 numbers. 65% completion percentage in those games. Like, Kevin, it goes on and on and on. What is your opinion? Like, how do you feel after hearing all that?
Well, I have 2 things to say. One about the Dolphins, one about Josh Allen.
Okay.
First of all, to your point, the Dolphins beat the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago. That was their first time in over 450 days that they had beaten a team with a winning record. And that team was the Bills when they were decimated by the Heat back on September 25th of 2022. So that being said, that translates into my Josh Allen point that I'm going to make. You said he's 9-2 versus the Dolphins in his career. That was the one loss when he literally had to put the team on his back that was just falling apart, hampered by dehydration and injuries. And then the other loss was his first ever matchup against the Dolphins with the Charles Clay drop back in Miami. early 2018. So this is just utter dominance by Josh Allen versus the Dolphins. And to your other point, that's why I feel so confident, because even though the Bills offense has been a little sloppy the last couple of weeks and it just seems like it's not clicking like it should be, for some reason, Josh Allen plays his best against the Dolphins, and that has me feeling very confident for Sunday night.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and you just kind of see this with certain players against certain teams. Mahomes' dominance in his division has been a thing that is much talked about. You saw Brady dominate against the AFC East. Had a little bit of hiccups occasionally with the Dolphins at times. It really dominated the Bills and Jets throughout history. And similarly to the Bills, like Josh Allen has struggled a little bit against the Jets at times, even 6-5 or whatever it is against the Patriots. He's like 7-4 against the Jets. Like, not dominance, good. I mean, he's generally winning those games, but still like 13-10 roughly between the two teams. It's not dominance. It's good. But then the dominance comes in the factor of 10 of his last 11 games against the Dolphins at some point. I think it comes down to these teams generally not having a defensive head coach, generally not being able to stop Josh Allen. That's what it comes down to, whereas Bill Belichick might be one of the best in the league ever at taking away a team's best option. That's why he's mixed well with someone like Tom Brady, who can dominate the offensive side of the ball. And the Jets, Robert Saleh hasn't been great there. His offense have been terrible, like downright awful. But he has been able to, since playing Josh as the NFC San Francisco 49ers, he has adjusted and figured out how to play the Bills tough, at least on the defensive side of the ball. They're not turning the ball over. The Jets are going to be hard to beat, even with their limited offense. So that's, especially Zach Wilson. I mean, he was efficient enough. But I mean, you realistically look at this semi banged up, no Howard, no Phillips. You've got no Bradley Chubb now. So that was basically their first round pick. They traded a first for him. So they're sitting, starting to get a little bit more decimated, or against the Jets defense or Patriots defense that's been very stingy. You probably pick the Dolphins defense in those situations because they are worse. Now you look at the offensive side of the ball, a revolutionary offense that's been quote unquote struggling a little bit lately. You saw Tyreek Hill drop last week. You've seen a lot of different things. Get into the game plan now a little bit here that we want to get into. What does the Bills offense need to do against this aforementioned Dolphins defense? There's a couple of ways to win here. Like, I don't particularly think they're very good at stopping the run or a running quarterback or a quarterback on the move or a quarterback in play action with deception. They have struggled at that all season, and I think you'll see it. That's why Lamar Jackson was so successful. He moves the pocket, play action. He does a lot of different things to get the defense off script. That works in Josh Allen's favor. That's what he's one of the best in the league at, is getting a defense off script. The Bills need to move the pocket. They need to confuse the Dolphins and what they're going to run and run the ball. 21st DVOA rush defense against a team that's looking to get after Josh Allen. Give him some support. They've ran the ball pretty well. They've ran it a little bit too much, in my opinion, at times lately, especially in the Chargers game when their EPA on dropbacks was like tops in the league. Would have liked to see some more passes in that game. And I don't think the run game was awfully efficient last week. But you're going to get prime time, season on the line, Josh Allen running the ball. And when he's running the ball, he's at his best. You're going to get Josh. I don't want to say Josh be Josh because I feel like we've used that on multiple shows now. But I think you're going to get an efficient offense that's going to move the pocket. He's going to be able to beat these DBs like Eli Apple, Kader Koh, who was absolutely torched last time by Stephon Diggs. And what is Jalen Ramsey going to do? Well, who will Jalen Ramsey line up against? Like, is he going to follow Diggs? He doesn't generally. Is he going to be on Gabe Davis then? I'm not exactly sure, because then you have Shakir and Diggs against Eli Apple and Kohu. Plus matchup for the Bills. Jalen Ramsey will obviously. Gabe Davis needs to do his best Gabe Davis impersonation to take Jalen Ramsey out of the game. But will they ultimately switch to Diggs? We'll see what the Dolphins defense does without their top pass rushers over 20 sacks missing. So, Kevin, what is your offensive game plan for the Bills against this Dolphins defense?
Well, to your point, not to, overuse this statement, but this is literally a game where we have to let Josh be Josh. And I think it's careful with how we do that, because we've been preparing ourselves the whole year for this moment. And the Bills were very careful with limiting the amount of hits that he was taking early on in the season and saying, okay, let's just be smart. Don't take those big hits, slide, get out of bounds. But as the Bills started losing more games, the pressure started to increase to unleash Josh. And this is the moment where it's like, if you don't unleash Josh, there won't be any playoffs potentially. Now we'll get into the scenarios coming up here on the rest of the show, but the point remains, this is the Josh Allen game. But with that comes a Josh Allen experience, because on one side, the reason why I think he's so good in these moments, especially versus the Dolphins, is because he knows how high the stakes are, and the adrenaline is pumping. And I think that brings out the best of him. But with that comes probably one or two bad decisions a game where he might just chuck it down the field and throw up an interception because he just says, I'm just going to throw this 50 yards and I'm going to have Stephon Diggs go catch it. Or like you saw last week versus the Patriots, where he's trying to pick up that first down. And if he would have continued to stretch out, it would have been 4th and 1. Okay, just do the snowplow. But no, he lateraled it 5 yards behind him. I don't know what that was, but you see these moments where, like I said, it's part of the Josh Allen experience, but that's why we love him, because he'll have 10 incredible plays, but then he'll have those 1 or 2 where you're just scratching your head saying, Josh, this isn't 2018 anymore. So all that to say, I think that the game plan needs to start in the middle of the field versus the Dolphins' banged up defense. And I think if you can get guys like Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, and James Cook going early and often, that will open up things down the field for Diggs and Davis, and that will take some of the pressure off Josh, where he doesn't feel like he has to do everything on the first few plays of the game.
Yeah, and you look at what they're missing. Jalen Phillips, 6.5 sacks, one of the better edge defenders in the league. Xavier Howard, he has interception in, but more importantly, 12 passes defense. Isn't the stickiest at his age right now in coverage, but definitely is someone that can get his hands on balls, got his hands on 13 balls, top 20 in the league at knocking down passes. He's been pretty efficient in his 30-year-old age, kind of dipped from being a top 10 corner really to be a top 40 corner. Different metrics say he's not great, but he is a veteran presence in there. Also going to be missing, as we've mentioned, Bradley Chubb, 11 sacks, total 17.5 sacks off the field from their edge defenders. Not many teams can overcome that. I mean, that's like taking for the Bills Floyd and taking off Greg Rousseau, or something like that. I mean, it's just too much at some point. Like it's part of what makes this defense pretty good here under Vic Fangio. And then missing one of your top corners, bringing in Eli Apple has been an experiment for any team right now. But you do bring in Emmanuel Ogbah. They do have a decent depth guy there with 5 sacks, so they could overcome that. But can they overcome both? Andrew Van Ginkel will play a ton too with his 6 sacks. So they have decent replacements. It'd be like the Bills trotting out AJ Epinesa per se. They have decent backups here for the Dolphins defense, but one that can they overcome all of these challenges in the first place? Because I don't think their secondary without Xavier Howard is very good. So we'll see how that all materializes over the course of the game, especially with a banged up Javon Holland, who's really good in my opinion. David Long has a ton of tackles. Jerome Baker's been injured. We'll see if he's able to go here. Kader Kohu had a nice rookie year last year. Okay. So far this season, but definitely a guy that's vulnerable in my opinion that you've seen be picked on by the Bills as recently as this year. Decent run-of-the-mill slot corner to me. Eli Apple's one of the league's worst. Seems to play good against the Bills, though, Kevin, but is one of the league's worst, in my opinion. Jalen Ramsey, top 20, top 25 corner right now, isn't to his number 1 overall stature, but is playing pretty good, and we've seen those matchups with Diggs materializes. Holland's one of the league's best safeties. They've been playing Deshaun Elliott more than Brandon Jones, so they have some decent usable safeties. Jerome Baker's your run-in-the-mill linebacker there. Zach Sealer is very good at the interior rush position with Christian Wilkins and Raekwon Davis, so they don't really have that's a pretty good core. They don't really have an issue there. Van Ginkel's played some good football. Van Ginkel, Chubb, and Phillips have been a really good operation. Ogbah can get after the passer, but is a complete liability against the run. That's why I think you run right at Emmanuel Ogbah in this game. I think it's a complete mismatch there in this, and you're going to see really they don't have a third edge defender at the moment. It's going to be Melvin Ingram. I just think his days are past him. So you're going to have Melvin Ingram and Emmanuel Ogbah as mainly your defensive ends in this game, 30 plus. So we'll see. Run right at him, Kevin. So that's my keys to the game. Attack Emmanuel Ogbah is a good pass rusher. Don't get him in situations. The Bills tackles are pretty good. Not worried about the edge pressure in this game.